Hey everyone, welcome back to Satanix Reviews. Time to look at another childhood favorite of mine. However, before we get to talking about this game, it's appropriate that I discuss the console it comes from first. The Nintendo 64 was a console that I have a lot of fond memories with. Okay, I didn't own one, but I did borrow the one my brothers own, so I did get to play a few games on it. On this console was GoldenEye, Mario Kart 64, Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, and Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. But before those, I had Nintendo 64 games on the Wii's Virtual Console. If you ask me, this was the definitive way to play retro games as opposed to nowadays where you need a goddamn monthly subscription if you just want one measly Nintendo 64 or Game Boy Advance game. Yeah, if I want to play Aria of Sorrow on a modern day console, I'll just freaking get Castlevania Advance Collection. Anyway, that's for another video. The Virtual Console games I had on the Wii were the first three Super Mario Bros. Games, as well as Mario World and 64, a few Zelda games, and the original Sonic game, as well as Sonic Chaos, just to name a few. One of these games, of course, was Star Fox 64. I was surprised by this one because it wasn't like any other game I'd played at the time. There was no jump button, and I couldn't take my time with the game because it all ran automatically. It was a non-stop barrage of enemies and obstacles, with pausing being my only method of stopping it. I did so badly at this game, but I just had to play it over and over again because my brothers would always beat it before I could. This was common for a lot of the video games I played as a kid. The process was always this. I find out about a new game, my brothers want to play it as well. I start losing in the game over and over. My brothers get further while I watch, and they beat the game before I can. So you can see what drove me to wanting to beat this game. Luckily nowadays, I can play this game on the hardest possible levels and the hardest possible difficulty without a problem. Well, much of a problem. The game is more like an arcade shooter, so think of it as sort of a 3D Galaga. The only models in the game were the ships, machines, buildings, and so on. They rarely ever show the character models, which admittedly look kinda early CGI. This was 1997, so I give it a pass for looking like this, but it did come out after Mario 64, which had better looking models than this. With that said, the rest of this game's look still holds up. As for the gameplay, it's as simple as just tapping that fire button repeatedly to shoot down your enemies. There's also a laser which allows you to lock on to targets, and it can wipe out nearby enemies as well. But if you want to destroy more surrounding enemies, you gotta use the smart bomb. And once you lock on with your smart bomb, it's doomsday for your enemies. You can also deflect enemies with, as the game calls it, the barrel roll. This game also has all sorts of secret paths and hidden objectives for the harder levels in the game. Going for the regular objectives usually gets you the normal route to the good ending, where missing the objectives or screwing up on certain levels brings you to the bad ending. I think it's kind of neat that both the good and bad endings actually have different levels and bosses. The last level is still Venom, where you fight Andross, but it depends upon the route you took. The bad ending side of Venom makes you fight an entire freaking armada after destroying a satellite, only for the boss to be a weird golem looking robot, followed by the final battle against Andross. But then this thing. What the hell? This scared me so much as a kid, and even as an adult, I still find it pretty freaky. As a kid, I always was scared of things coming at the screen, even if it's not a horror game. Well, okay, I didn't play horror games as a kid, but you get my point. It wasn't the moon from Majora's Mask that got me. It wasn't the piano from Mario 64. It was this freaking moment that scared me. The only other video game I can think of was Twilight Princess, which, yeah, about half the Twilight stuff in that game scared the living crap out of me as a kid. And if that weren't bad enough, the game practically taunts you after beating this final boss. Everything's all normal and triumphant with the upbeat music until, at the last minute, the real Andros laughs at you, implying that you're screwed. Story-wise, this game is basically more like a remake of the original Star Fox on Super Nintendo. There was going to be a Star Fox 2 on the same console, but that got cancelled, so we got this instead. Star Fox 2 would eventually be released as a Super Nintendo Classic Edition exclusive, but it was only one area. It was an incomplete game, but it looked like it could have been really impressive. As for this game, this became one of the most popular Nintendo 64 games, and there are just too many quotes for this game. I can just name random lines with the voices those lines are associated with, and my brother will almost immediately recognize them. If you want a really funny time, there's a video where all the dialogue is nothing but voice lines from the game, and it's just a bunch of the characters eating at a restaurant. The lines are that well known. When it comes to the story, it's basically like Star Wars, but with animals. The plot centers around, as you'd guess, Star Fox. Their old leader, James McCloud, had been tricked by one of his teammates, Pigma, causing James to be captured. The last remaining member, Peppy, fled from Venom and would meet James's son, Fox, who would become the new leader of Star Fox with two other members, Falco and Slippy. Thus, the game is just an all-out war against Andros. Each level has a ton of enemies to face, each ending with some sort of general or commander who Fox has to destroy. The most famous enemy of the game, however, has to be Starwolf. These characters made no appearance in any prior Star Fox game, which by that I mean the first game, so this was their introduction. They were going to be introduced in Star Fox 2, but again, that was not released until recently. The characters claim to know each other, but you don't really need anything outside of that. Each member of Starwolf has some beef with an opposing member of Star Fox. Wolf is after Fox, Pigma is after Peppy, Leon is after Falco, and Andrew is after Slippy. I understand Wolf and Pigma, but I don't get Leon and Andrew. Leon's just some arrogant jerk, and Andrew is a loud, obnoxious jerk, who apparently is Andros's nephew. How do I know this? He literally shouts, Uncle Andros! When you defeat him for the first time. I never understood how these characters survive being blown up, by the way. I mean, you see the ships explode. Shouldn't they be fried? If you play for the good ending, however, they have advanced ships and are completely alive. Hell, in Star Fox Assault, they still somehow survive being blown up. Twice! Whatever, it's still cool to see them get defeated. If anything, Pigma deserves getting blown up multiple times. This character has the nerve to make fun of the death of Fox's father, saying that he screamed real good before he died. He calls Peppy his old pal even after betraying him. Yeah, just shoot him as much as possible. With that said, Leon is also pretty cocky and full of himself. My brother always says he saves him for last because of how rude he is. My favorite aspect about him is just when he says things so deadpan, especially when he just says, I'll take care of you. Even outside of Star Wolf, there are other enemies that are pretty memorable. It's just like Dragon Ball, where even though they're side characters, you still remember them. These side villains don't have names, or I think they do, but I don't think they say them in game. But I remember every single one of them. Some of my favorites include the boss from the asteroid level, the submarine boss, the train boss, and the robot weapon from Sector X. The asteroid boss starts calm and calculated, with some witty things to say as the fight progresses, only for the end of the fight to show he's willing to trick you. But he'll go absolutely insane when things don't go his way, and he'll say, "You're not as stupid as you look." The submarine boss has you fighting what appears to be more like a battleship that can go underwater. I love this fight, not just for the captain himself, but also for how it forces you to strategize and use more than just your laser, because its armor is too tough. The robot weapon from Sector X, known as Spybot, is actually a pretty messed up part of the game in terms of lore. The entire level is like going through a space graveyard with broken machines and debris everywhere. It makes it feel like a ghost town. And just to make things creepier, Spybot is constantly following you. Apparently, it's an incomplete creation with an unpredictable method of attacking, so you could come to the conclusion that this thing just destroyed this entire lab. So it's a freaking murderer or something? It's a disturbing level from the music to the look to the characters' reactions to everything. On the positive side, there's also the train level, where the entire level is one big boss fight. It's called the Forever Train for a reason, so you have to destroy this train before it gets to the supply depot. Meanwhile, the train pilot is doing everything it can to screw you over. There are two ways of disposing him. There's a traditional method of just defeating the boss he unleashes, but honestly, the defeat is so underwhelming. The boss flails around and it lands on him, and his screams sound so half-assed. It's a pathetic end, but there's a much more satisfying defeat. The alternate defeat has him hitting the gas on the train when he's headed for the supply depot. He panics and tries to slow down, but it's just going out of control until finally, boom! It crashes into the building at maximum speed, blowing it up completely. Now that's a defeat I want to see from such an action-packed game. Luckily, defeating the train boss like this sends you right to the good ending path, where you fight a big-ass army protecting Venom. Throughout the entire level, you can hear some of the soldiers and generals struggling to keep up with you and your team. It's an epic final level, and it's followed up by a non-stop barrage of boss fights. First is this weird UFO-looking boss with its metallic tentacles like Doc Ock from Spider-Man. This boss is pretty fun, and it just gets better. Like I said, you get a rematch against Starwolf, which is pretty funny if you skipped their first fight on your first playthrough. Because if you never played that first fight, you'd just be thinking, who the heck are these guys? What are they talking about? New ships? I just met them. What the hell's going on? Either way, I originally hated this fight because they had shields, but I've learned to be so good at this that you can see my all bosses no damage run of this fight. And I was able to do this Starwolf rematch, the final boss, and the final chase at the very end, all without taking any damage, all on my first try without any edits or cuts. It's official. I made this game weep. Now, funny enough, I did try this again a few months ago, but to no avail. I can still do all those parts without dying once, but it's still common for me to get hit. I think I just got lucky, but hey, at least I recorded it for all of you to see. For those who haven't seen that video, I'll link it in the description. Anyway, whichever ending you get, you have to fight Andross alone. The true Andross, instead of revealing to be a robot when he blows up, just becomes a brain and eyeballs that you have to destroy. Only I have the brains to rule Lilat, huh? Good to know you can still make jokes with most of your head completely disintegrated, Andross. However, this is followed up by the "if I go down, I'm taking you with me" cliche that I love seeing. This game also has, in my opinion, The most perfect ending I've ever seen in a video game. Fox nearly dies while Andross's lair is being destroyed, but he sees James, his father, who guides him back out of the lair so that he can achieve a complete victory. The music that plays when Fox finally reunites with everyone is absolutely wonderful. It's so triumphant and beautiful to listen to, and it's made even more satisfying by everyone cheering you on for saving the entire galaxy. Fox looks around to see where James is, but no matter what, he doesn't seem to be anywhere. It's left up to the viewer's interpretation as to why Fox saw him. Was James still alive all this time? Was it his ghost? Was it a visual representation of Fox's courage to never give up, similar to Ratatouille with Cousteau's ghost being a representation of Remy's love for cooking? Any answer is plausible. The end credits play with everyone returning back home with a triumphant ending theme playing until they land where they're congratulated by General Pepper, who offers them to become part of the Cornerian army. However, Fox turns down their offer because Star Fox prefers doing things their own way. The final scene shows all of them running back to their ships before flying off into space. The visuals are stunning, and all I can focus on at this point is the amazing music. The slower it gets, the more epic it sounds. Then it shows off your final score with "The End" in the middle of the screen. I'm not gonna lie, if there were no other sequels, I would just be completely satisfied with this one. There were other sequels, such as Star Fox Adventures, which was more like a Zelda game, Star Fox Assault, which felt a lot closer to a Star Fox game, and Star Fox Command, which tried to be like Star Fox 2, but didn't fully feel like it captured the spirit of the older games. And I haven't played any of the Star Fox games after Command, aside from the 3DS remake of this game. I admit it is the best Star Fox game since this one, but I still don't think it's as good. It's a great game though, so I do recommend it to anyone who loves this game like I do. With that said, I do have to state a few complaints. I do love this game and it's one of my favorites, but some things hold me back from saying it's the best I've ever played, even if it's the game I've replayed the most. The first is a nitpick, but it's still a complaint. In order to unlock expert mode, you have to get the highest possible score on every single level. Once the numbers get red on the score is when you've met the requirements for a medal on that level. This is okay for some levels, but it's a pain in the ass for others. It could even cost you failing a mission just to get your score up. While I find the good ending routes Venom to be easy for the medal, the opposite side is outright sadistic. There are way too many enemies, and you need to come prepared with your bomb supply maxed out so you can hit everything. If that wasn't bad enough, you also have to memorize the routes with the most enemies to destroy. This level's fine if you want to play the level on its own, but I don't suggest getting the medal for this one. If you want to try the expert mode, I suggest using cheat codes or something. Weirdly enough, getting the medals is actually easier on expert mode due to there being even more enemies to destroy. Secondly, if you play this game for the first time, you can get screwed over easily on some stages if you're not careful. You can backtrack to some levels, but this forces you to lose a life. Speaking of which, there are no continues. This game only takes an hour to finish for one entire route, so I guess that makes sense. But it's pretty brutal to start at the beginning of the game. Also, if you die just once, you lose your laser power-ups. You also lose them if you bump into too many things and one of your wings gets destroyed. Lastly, Slippy. I'll admit, none of the characters in Star Fox are ones I'd consider any of my favorite video game characters, but we all agree Slippy is the worst. The character himself isn't all that bad, it's just his voice. He's annoying. I can actually tolerate his voice in other games, and this game has some fantastic voice acting for a console game in 1997, with Pepe's voice actor actually being the soldier from Team Fortress 2, Rick May. But Slippy's voice is just too high pitched, and there are some awkward line reads. The last thing I'd like to discuss is the designs. Personally, I'm not into furries that are made for fan service appeal, but I don't mind ones that are made to be badass or just plain creative. Sonic, Zootopia, and Banjo-Kazooie are all examples of furry designs that I like because I see them as colorful designs. I'm aware that the furry community is a very large community. In fact, I have a friend who loves the furry designs no matter what. With that said, I just see them as any other character designs for animal characters. If they look cool, I think they look cool. If they're meant to look that way, I just pray they have more to them outside of that. So I think the designs for this game are still cool and creative. As for the games after this one, well, I'll discuss that in a future review. Overall, this game is yet another favorite of mine. I love its epic size and scale, its soundtrack, its look, its replayability, its bosses, its themes, and its immense amount of quotable lines. I'll give this game a 9.5 out of 10. It's so close to being a 10 for me, but there are those problems I mentioned before. I still love the hell out of this game though, so I still say it's that good. Either way, thanks for watching. Till then, everyone.